Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, great, great. So, Danish, welcome to Bangalore.
Thank you.
Uh, the thing with Danish is that we don't get to see enough of his work in Bangalore. And so this half an hour, though the title of this half an hour session that I'm supposed to have with Danish is supposed to be about the journey of the Urdu language. But I thought since Bangalore audiences get so little of Danish's work that we will also intersperse it with some of his work as well. So we begin with
Good. We need people like that. He's planted by me, by the way. Here. Tarun, please clap again.
and at the end of the session, we are going to give you some good news. Danish is coming back soon to Bangalore. So, yeah. Okay. So this session is about looking at the Urdu language and seeing how over time it has journeyed, changed courses many times, and where we find it today. And you have created a Dastan performance called Dastan Urdu Hai Jiska Naam. So I was wondering, this language that we call Urdu today had so many names at different times. It was called Dehlavi, it was called Hindavi, and it moved through, and there are so many stories about it, so many misconceptions as well. So tell us a little bit about not just the journey of the language, but also how you made the performance, the Dastan.
Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, so patiently. I mean, it's a long day, and you've been listening a lot of brilliant people, so your brain must be slightly numbed by now. And to patiently wait for my session, which is like right at the fag end. Hats off to you. मैं तो नहीं बैठता किसी के लिए इस तरह से. मैं तो भाग जाता. तो ये एक अच्छा इंटरेस्टिंग उन्होंने सवाल किया और इसका ओरिजिन सवाल का ये है कि आई हैड कम हियर फॉर द बैंगलोर पोइट्री फेस्टिवल इन अगस्त एंड of course I spoke about my association with poetry and the poets and the poems that have influenced me and a little bit about my own poetry. And at that time Shiny said you have to come back for the Bangalore Literature Festival, and we were thinking what we should do because she didn't want to repeat what I've done at the Bangalore Poetry Festival. And then suddenly this brainwave came in my head that on 6th of December, I'm premiering, opening a new Dastan at Jashn-e-Rekhta called Dastan Urdu Hai Jiska Naam. And why don't we talk about that Dastan itself at the Literature Festival? And thankfully, mercifully, Shiny liked the idea. And it saved my work because I had to prepare only for the Dastan in Delhi, and I could just regurgitate whatever I've done there here in front of you. So now the thing with Urdu is that, of course, you live in a world of propaganda and misconception and memes and WhatsApp University. So all kind of presumptions about this language are there. But the truth is that this language is really, really a very Indian language. Now, the thing that we need to understand, the journey of Urdu is really not about when Urdu begins. The journey of Urdu is starting sometime around 2,500 years back. And the journey of Urdu actually starts with Gautam Buddha. Because at that time, around 2500 BC, a large section of North and Central India used to speak Prakrit and Pali. And the elites used to speak Sanskrit. And when Gautam Buddha, he attained nirvana, because the elites used to speak Sanskrit, he chose the language, the medium through which to dissipate his wisdom and knowledge and his teachings as Prakrit. So Prakrit straight away, headlong, kind of got into this battle with Sanskrit, and Prakrit started influencing people who were marginalized, who were, the commoners. And then 300 years later, Ashok, he sees this devastation in the Battle of Kalinga, and he decides to become Buddhist. And he decides that Gautam Buddha's teachings should be engraved on stones. And he chooses Prakrit, the language which Gautam Buddha chooses. So in some sense, most of the languages that we speak today in India is a reactionary kind of a movement that started from Buddha's time, where it was a battle against the elites and the people who were ruling. And by the time we are in the first millennium, between the zero common era to 1000 common era, The Chinese had invented the compass, and the compass it greatly helped sea navigation. So what happened that trade and merchandise and these things began, and a lot of Arab and Turks and Iranian merchants started coming to India. They started interacting with the Indians, and then this interaction resulted in a series of languages developing organically over a period of 1,000 years, and most of them were called abhransh. So abhransh jo tha, the literal meaning of the word abhransh is something that's bigda hua, sullied, broken. That's what abhransh means. So these languages were basically called abhransh bhasha, and most of the modern languages that have come out in this country have originated from abhransh. So in the 10th century, around 10th century AD, the Abhransh Bhasha, which was popular and which was being spoken in northern India, was called Shur Seni Abhransh. तो शूर सेनी अभ्रंश से ब्रज अवधि मैथिली खड़ी बोली all these languages are originating from that period, and also there is no clear snap point. आप ये नहीं कह सकते हैं कि इस दौर में लोग अभ्रंश बोल रहे थे और इसके बाद जो है लोगों ने जो है खड़ी बोली में बोलना शुरू कर दिया. So a lot of this is also happening concurrently. You know, it's a fluid kind of a period that we are living in. People are coming, some people are attacking us, some people are staying back, and there is a large section of 150 years when no attack happens in northern India, which is the invasion of Mahmud Ghaznavi and then Muhammad Ghori. So that period, 150 years, sees kind of peace in northern India. There's no major attack happening. And in that period, a lot of people came from West Asia and they settled in this country. And these people brought in their own languages. They brought in their own scripts. They brought in charkha. They brought in paper making techniques. They brought in their music. They brought in their food. They brought in their architecture. They brought in their clothes. And a lot of these things, they started mingling with the Indian culture here, and it started mixing around. And history tells us that these people who were coming from Afghanistan, from Persia, from Arab land, they used to call the language of North India and Gujarat and Punjab as Hindvi or Hindi. That's what they call it. Of course, I mean, I don't need to get into that. You also know the word Hindi also comes from Sindhu, because the Persians could not pronounce Sindhu and they started calling it Hindu. And that's why it became Hindi. So obviously all those darlings and lovers of Hindi, they should worry about it, because the word of their origin is coming from the Persians and the Arabs. So they used to call the language of North India as Hindi and Hindvi. Now, it so happened that as these different milieus and sections were interacting, so there are 3 or 4 centers through which this language is coming from. The first most apparent center is the mixing and the mingling of the West Asian, Turkish, Persian, Afghani forces with the Indian forces. So though a lot of these invaders or kings used to come from the West Asia, their army largely constituted of Indians, because it was not economically feasible for them to travel with so much army. So they would come with a small contingent, a small brigade, and most of the enrollment would happen at the army level, at a local level. So these local Indians who were enrolling in these armies, they were speaking Khadi Boli, Punjabi, Haryani, Avdi, Maithili, and these guys were speaking Turkish, Persian. So a language started developing with their interaction. And that language was called Lashkari, Lashkar ki zaban, Fauj ki zaban. उससे बहुत सारे अल्फाज जो हैं वो हिंदुस्तानी ज़बान में आ गए, जैसे फौज, सिपाही, तीर, कमान, ये सब वहाँ से आ रहा है, ये यहाँ के अल्फाज नहीं है ये. Then another section where this language was kind of budding was when trade started happening, and a lot of travelers started coming in. Some travelers were just peripatetic, they just wanted to come and experience this country. A lot of these were intellectuals who were trying to find out about this country. A lot of them were traders. तो इनके लिए सराय बनने लग गई, जगह जगह इन लोगों के लिए सराय बनने लगी. And the interaction between these karigars, these travelers, these merchants, sarai owners, the interaction resulted in a language coming up which is called Saraiki, which basically means Sarai ki Zaban. Yes, and also in Punjab. पंजाबी लोग तो उसको सराइकी को पंजाबी का एक डायलेक्ट मानते हैं. तो सराय की ज़बान सराइकी, and that is the language in which Bulle Shah and Baba Farid Shah are doing their poetry later. Then the third section is the where the karigars are working together. So you have architecture coming up. Now these West Asian architects and what do you call masons, they are teaching the Indian karigars how to make a dome, or how to make a mihrab, or how to make like an arch, or how to make a pulpit. So all these things, this knowledge is being imparted to the Indian masonry and to the Indian architects. And through this, in the workshops, in the construction spaces, a language is developing, which is kind of a mixture of these languages. But the most important influence was happening because of the Bhakti and the Sufi movements. And a lot of Sufis and the Bhakti movement was basically about, it was anti-establishment. They didn't want to speak the language of the exploiters and those who were oppressing people. And they were against all these ritual practices and hierarchies which were developed through religion or through societal practices. They wanted to break that. So they wanted a language which is commoners' language through which they can send their messages across to people. So slowly in Sufi dargahs and in the Bhakti Sant Akhadas, a language started developing. And this language had at its base a language what we understand as Khadi Boli. Khadi Boli is the language which was spoken around Delhi. That's called Khadi Boli. So they used Khadi Boli as a base language, and wherever these Sufi sants went, they started absorbing languages from the local areas. Also the language of Persia, Turkey, Arabic, Sanskrit, and whichever local areas they went, they started adopting these languages, these words into this. And this language began to be known as Hindavi, which one of the great writers of Dakkani from your land, Mullah Waji, who was in the Golconda kingdom, who wrote the first book of Urdu prose called Sabras in 1653. And in that book, he terms this language as Zaban-e Hindustan, the language of Hindustan, which he called Hindavi. So Hindavi becomes the language which is propagating the Sufi and the Sant's message. And the Sufi and the Sant message, it struck a direct chord with the people. Because लोग जो हैं वो तंग आ चुके हैं, आप भी तंग आ चुके हैं इस ज़माने में, लेकिन आपके पास भाषा नहीं है क्योंकि आपको हैक कर लिया है सोशल मीडिया ने और व्हाट्सएप ने. So you are bereft of any language. But thankfully in that period people had language and they developed that language and they spoke through that language. तो ये influences थे जिनकी वजह से ये ज़बान जो है हिंदवी बनी. अब हुआ क्या कि in 1297 Alauddin Khilji, he captures Gujarat. So the language which is in northern India, which is now primarily Hindi, it reaches Gujarat. And in 1327, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, he orders en masse his capital to shift from Delhi to Devgiri in Deccan. So they all come here. So this expedites the process of Hindavi reaching the other parts of India. And then slowly Hindavi, when it's in Gujarat, it's taking heavily from Gujarati. When it's in Deccan, it's taking heavily letters and words from Marathi, from Telugu, from Kannada. And we have two other forms of Hindavi coming up. One is called Gujari. Gujari, in some sense, if you were to hear Gujari, it would sound like a mixture of Gujarati and Urdu. But it would be written in Persian script. And Dakkani was a mixture of, again, Hindavi, Khadi Boli, Telugu, Marathi, and Dakkani. And it was called as Dakkani. So these two forms began. Now what is happening that in the north, the Mughals have come in power by that time, and the Mughals chose Persian as their court language. So the elite and all the literary movement and everything that is happening in Persian. Not much attention is being given to Hindavi. Sorry, am I taking too much time? Huh? I've already gotten into like 14. One question has gotten into 14 minutes. Do you want me to cut short or do you want me to move ahead? So, but Akbar has his capital Agra is in Brajbhumi, and he gives, he facilitates in propagating Braj a lot. In Akbar's court is Abdur Rahim Khan Khanan, who's the great poet warrior. And you know Abdur Rahim Khan Khanan as Rahim, the poet. And Abdur Rahim Khan Khanan is writing beautiful Braj poetry in Krishna Bhakti. उनका एक बहुत मशहूर दोहा है जो मैं अक्सर कोट करता हूँ. आप लोगों ने जावेद साहब को देखा होगा सुनते हुए, तो आप लोग कह देंगे जावेद साहब ने ये पढ़ा था, पर मैं इसको सुनाता रहता हूँ कि अब रहीम मुश्किल परी गाड़े दो काम. अब रहीम मुश्किल परी गाढ़े दो काम, सांचे से तो जग नहीं झूठे मिले न राम. So these are these great poets, Tulsidas, Kabir, Namdev, Mirabai. They are all doing poetry in this language around that time. But what happens that in Dakkan, when Temurlang, whom you call Tamerlane, when he attacks in the end of 14th century, around 1390s or something, the rulers of Gujarat and Dakkan, they revolt against Delhi. So in Gujarat, we have Ahmad Shahi Sultanate coming up, and in Deccan, we have Bahmani Sultanate coming up. And these sultanates are they are doing favoritism towards the local language that's being spoken. Though Persian is still being used in those courts, but they are also giving a lot of favor to the local language, which is Gujri and Dakkani, that's being spoken in these areas. Then Bahmani Sultanate, it breaks into 5 sultanates. So you have Golconda, Bijapur, Bidar, Berar, Ahmednagar. So in this, Golconda and Bijapur are the two who are favoring Dakkani and who are propagating Dakkani. So you have Bijapur's king, which is Ibrahim Adil Shah Doyam, who's known as Jagat Guru. He wears Gerua saffron robes. He writes poetry in Dakkani in praise of the Devi Devtas and also Hazrat Muhammad and also the great Sufi Khwaja Banda Nawaz Gesu Daraz. And Khwaja Banda Nawaz Gesu Daraz is also very instrumental in beginning for getting Urdu and Dakkani here, because he has penned some 30 books, and he comes and he settles down in Gulbarga, which is in Bijapur's time. So all these people are propagating Dakkani language. So Ibrahim Adil Shah, he writes a book on 59 rags, which is called Kitab-e-Nauras. And this book is about music, and is written in Dakkani language. Then you have Quli Qutub Shah, who's the king of Golconda, who is the first Urdu poet to have a collection. He's writing in Dakkani. Then in his court, there is Mullah Wajhi, who's writing the famous love story of Quli Qutub Shah and the great dancer Bhagmati. And Quli Qutub Shah marries Bhagmati, gives her the name Hyder Mahal, and constructs the city Hyderabad in her honor. And then you have Ghawasi, who was again a great poet, who was in the Golconda Hukumat. And Ghawasi is actually the fort caretaker. So he's like a security guard or a chowkidar, but he hates that job. So he writes a panegyric poem for the king, and the king likes it, and Ghawasi becomes the court poet, and then he becomes the Golconda's ambassador to Bijapur. And then he's writing Masnavis. Masnavis are long-form poems. Something like, what is that book that Vikram Seth wrote in poetry, the novel? The Golden Gate. So the Golden Gate is a Masnavi. So basically a story when written in a long poetry form, that's what Masnavi is, before you start wondering what Masnavi is. So Vikram Seth is basically writing Masnavi when he's writing Golden Gate, because it's a story in a poem. So Ghawasi is writing a Masnavi Tutinama, which is based on the stories of Panchtantra. He's writing a Masnavi called Saiful Muluk wa Badiut Jamal. And these Masnavis become prototype for the great Masnavi writers in the 18th and the 19th century in the northern India. But the two greatest of poets who rise from Dakkan and whose poetry actually bring a difference to Urdu are Wali Dakkani and Siraj Aurangabadi. And they are from Dakkan. And their poetry, when it reaches Delhi, which is the end of Aurangzeb's reign, which is late 17th century, early 18th century, that's when the poets in Delhi, they sit up and they start taking noticing of this language. And they realize that great poetry can also be said in this language and not just in Persian. So in some sense, at that time, by this time, this language is being called Rekhta, which basically means a potpourri, a mixture. That's what Rekhta means. And truly that's what represents Rekhta, because it's drawing from all these different sources. So you have Khadi Boli, you have Sanskrit, you have Punjabi, you have Farsi, Turki, Arabi, Marathi, Telugu, Kannada, Gujarati, all these languages, their words are going into this language, and you have this unique language coming up called Rekhta. So Rekhta, in some sense, is a linguistic and a literary pushback against Persian. Because at that time, the greatest empire in the world is Safavid Empire. They hold the same kind of sway in this country or across the regions of Asia as the British held some 200 years later. So because the British colonialism and imperialism lasted longer, was more exploitative, had more power, ironically, I'm sitting here and talking to you in English. If this would have been 200 years back, I would have been talking to you in Farsi. Because that's, by the time the 17th century comes, there are more Persian speakers in India than there are in Persia. The form of Persian which is written in India is called Sabke Hindi. And that form of Persian has more speakers worldwide than the Persians in the 17th century. So in some sense, the real pushback against linguistic imperialism is a language which is formed here in this country, and that's called Rekhta, which becomes Urdu later, and that's where the pushback is happening. And one of the reasons why Urdu became Urdu is because Dakhan was the homeland, which gave it the refuge, which allowed it to kind of blossom and flourish, and then that language goes back into North. And आज भी यही होता है कि साउथ में सब काम होता है, GST जाता है नॉर्थ में, तो उधर जाके लोग अपना बड़ा ढोल बजाते हैं कि साहब हम देखो कितना काम कर रहे हैं, वी आर द हाईएस्ट पेइंग दिस डूइंग दैट. तो मेहनत आप करते हैं, फसल कटती है नॉर्थ में. यही हो रहा था, मेहनत हो रही थी दक्कन में, लैंग्वेज यहाँ फ्लरिश कर रही थी, वो बाद में चली गई नॉर्थ में, वहाँ उर्दू बन गया. अब उर्दू वाले जो हैं वो दक्कनी को एक लोकल डायलेक्ट समझ के, उसको कमतर जबान समझ के बोलते रहते हैं. सो दिस इज इन नटशेल इज व्हाट उर्दू's history is. We are just left with 7 minutes now. Thank you.
Awesome. But you have also taken on many of the questions that I was going to ask you. So that's great.
वैसे मैं आपको सीक्रेटली बता दूं कि लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल वालों ने बोला है कि ये लास्ट सेशन है, तो आप इसे बढ़ा सकते हैं. अब ये डिपेंड करता है आपके ऊपर. ये देखिए, आप दिलचस्पी दिखाएंगे तो हम सुनाएंगे, नहीं दिखाएंगे तो हमको लपेटना पड़ेगा.
So, for many of us, our first interaction with Urdu has been through poetry. We've known it as a language of poetry. But when I was listening to Urdu poetry, and there were all these eloquent, beautiful names. You had ghazals and nazams and masnavi, which you just spoke about. Then there's qasida, marsiya, all these different forms of writing, which come and go through the ages. So for us, mostly uninitiated, in very simple ways, can you help us understand what these forms are with some examples? Maybe of something you have written also, if you have written.
लोग मुझसे पूछते हैं तो मैं कहता हूँ भाई मैं शायरी गर्दी करता हूँ. शायरी गर्दी आप समझते हैं?
नहीं.
आवारा गर्दी.
अच्छा.
मैं दूसरों की शायरी याद करके सुनाता हूँ, अपनी शायरी में नहीं सुनाता हूँ, क्योंकि मुझे अपनी शायरी याद ही नहीं रहती. आधे टाइम तो मैं डरा हुआ होता हूँ कि मेरी शायरी कोई सुनेगा तो वो कहेगा क्या बकवास शायरी है. तो मैं दूसरों की शायरी बहुत अच्छे से याद करके सुना देता हूँ.
थोड़ा मिक्स करके अपना भी सुना
हाँ,
दीजिए.
but whatever I can remember, I will,
Yeah.
and of
So
course
first
there is
tell us-
phone.
But first tell us the differences, like the key, what is what.
So these are just various forms of poems that she's telling. The basic unit in any poem is sher, which is a couplet. And of course, the most rigid form of a couplet writing poem is ghazal. And ghazal has a very regimented form. So there is an opening couplet which has to rhyme, and then there is a closing couplet where the author's signature comes in. I mean, just think, these guys are so brilliant. So many years back, they figured out the copyright thing. Yeah, you can't infringe upon it. The poet's name comes in the makta. So the opening couplet is called matla, where the rhyming has to happen. The first line and the second line, they have to rhyme. The next couplets don't have to have the same rhyming, but the last line has to match the rhyming scheme that you have chosen in the first couplet. And then in the last couplet, of course, you also bring in the writer's, the poet's name. So that's ghazal. Then you have nazm. Nazm is a poem, just a poem. So nazm subsumes ghazal. Nazm is any poem. Ghazal is also a nazm.
So
Qasida is
but
also a
nazm
nazm.
has to have like rhyming as
Yeah,
well.
of course. I mean, there
Yeah.
can also be azad nazm,
Yeah.
which is
Oh,
free
so
verse.
you have free verse.
Yes, we have
Yeah,
free
yeah,
verse,
yeah.
which is azad nazm. But actually, no free verse poetry is free verse. It has its own internal rhyming and it has its own internal rhythm. तो जो लोग सोचते हैं 4 सेंटेंस बीच में कहीं से भी ब्रेक करके लिख दें तो वो पोइट्री हो जाती है, वो ऐसा नहीं होता है ना? वो आज़ाद नज़्म के अंदर भी एक तरीका होता है. जैसे अफजाल अहमद सैयद, who's currently perhaps the greatest free writing verse poet, अब उनकी नज़्म है कि आखिरी दलील कि तुम्हारी मोहब्बत अब पहले से ज़्यादा से, तुम्हारी मोहब्बत अब पहले से okay, I'm forgetting this one. I'll quote the other one. कि तुम्हारे कदमों के लिए मेरा दिल, तुम्हारे कदमों के लिए मेरा दिल उस पुल की तरह है जो पानी की सतह से नीचे रह गया. So I mean, this is free verse, but it binds. There's a music to it. It binds. तुम्हारी मोहब्बत पहले से ज़्यादा वफ़ा चाहती है. I think that's the line. तुम्हारी मोहब्बत अब पहले से ज़्यादा वफ़ा चाहती है. सुबह बारिश हो रही थी जो तुम्हें उदास कर देती है. उस मंज़र को लाजवाल बनने का हक़ था. उस खिड़की को सब्ज़े की तरफ खोलते हुए तुम्हें मुहासरे में आए हुए एक दिल की याद नहीं आई. एक गुमनाम पुल पर तुमने अपने आप से कहा मुझे अकेले रहना है. मोहब्बत को तुमने हैरत ज़दा कर देने वाली खुशकिस्मती नहीं समझा. मेरी किस्मत जहाज़ रानी के कारखाने में नहीं बनी, फिर भी मैंने समुंदर के फासले तय किए. पुरअसरार तौर पे ख़ुद को ज़िंदा रखा और बेरहमी से शायरी की. मेरे पास एक मोहब्बत करने वाली की सारी खामियां और आखिरी दलील है. सो दिस इज अ फ्री वर्ड्स पोएम, बट देयर इज अ म्यूजिक टू दिस पोएम. सो आप बजा सकते हैं ताली. ताली बजाने से ये होगा कि ये पता लगेगा कि आपको समझ में आ रहा है, और उससे आपकी इज्जत बढ़ेगी. आप जब बाहर निकलेंगे तो लोग आप ही की तरफ मुड़ के देखेंगे, अरे आप समझ गए थे वो पोएम. तो अपनी इज्जत अफजाई के लिए आप वाह वाह करिए, ताली बजाइए. मेरा क्या, मैं तो निकल जाऊंगा, आपको बेंगलोर में रहना है. तो देन सो नज्म इज अ जॉनरिक फॉर्म ऑफ पोएम. एनी पोएम इज नज्म. अब पोएम के अंदर सोनेट भी है, विलिनल भी है, लिमेरिक भी है, अलग अलग फॉर्म्स हैं. तो उसी के अंदर नज्म के अंदर कसीदा भी है, मरसिया भी है, मसनवी भी है, गज़ल भी है, दोहा भी है, तो कबित भी है. ऑल दीज डिफरेंट फॉर्म्स आर कमिंग. देन कसीदा इज अ पैनेजाइरिक पोएम. तो आप किसी की तारीफ में कसीदा लिख रहे हैं, जैसे आजकल हमारी गोदी मीडिया कसीदा लिखती रहती है ना? तो वो पैनेजाइरिक पोएम है. वो नॉर्मली या तो जो है आप दो ही जगह आप पैनेजाइरिक होते हैं, या तो आप हुक्मरान को सलाम कर रहे होते हैं या आप ऊपर वहाँ सलाम कर रहे होते हैं. तो जो इंटेग्रिटी वाला पोएट होता है उधर सलाम करता है, जो इधर वाला पोएट होता है वो इधर सलाम करता है. अच्छा, उसके अलावा देन आपका मरसिया है. सो मरसिया इज अ लॉन्ग फॉर्म लैमेंटेशन पोएम which developed over the 18th century, and then the form comes which becomes like a fixed form where you have a quatrain and a couplet, a quatrain and a couplet. तो एक quatrain और एक couplet, 4 लाइन 2 लाइन. The quatrain rhyming scheme is A A A A, and the couplet rhyming scheme can be C D. It can be completely any can. तो जैसे अब जैसे मिर्ज़ा दबीर का मरसिया है, किस शेर की आमद है कि रन कांप रहा है. कांप रहा है इज द राइमिंग नाउ. हाँ, किस शेर की आमद है कि रन कांप रहा है. रुस्तम का जिगर जेर कफन कांप रहा है. हर कसर सलातीन ज़मन कांप रहा है. सब एक तरफ चरख कोहन कांप रहा है. अब ये क्वाट्रेन हो गया. ना कम्स द कपलेट. शमशीर बकफ देख के हैदर के पिसर को, जिब्रील लरसते हैं समेटे हुए पर को. So now that's how one set gets completed. So that's Marsiya. Then you have Masnavi, which I explained to you. Then Doha, you know. Sher, of course, you know. Then you have Qita, Rubai, which is again a quatrain. जैसे जोश मलिया बादी का है कि लैलाए सुखन को आँख भर के देखो, लैलाए सुखन को आँख भर कर देखो, कामूसो लुगात से गुजर कर देखो, अल्फाज के सर पर नहीं उड़ते मानी, अल्फाज के सीनों में उतर कर देखो. सो देन यू नो दिस इज किता. अब आप लोग जरा बाद में अगर मेहरबान हो मेरे ऊपर तो मैं आपको अंग्रेजी में इसका ट्रांसलेशन सब दे दूंगा. हाँ हाँ, हर चीज ऐसी थोड़ी फ्री में हो जाती है. हाँ.
How much time do you have one more question and then we can open it?
Yes, please, whatever.
Yeah? Do we have that? Yeah?
तुम्ही
Just
तो कह रही
once.
थी कि बढ़ा सकते हैं 2 मिनट 4 मिनट 5 मिनट.
So then one
यहाँ तुम
question,
बंदूक
then
रख
we'll
रही हो.
open it out. Yeah.
Sorry, I think we have we finished our time, 30
No, no,
minutes.
there's one question that we will do, and then we'll open it out.
Okay.
This question I have to ask you,
Okay,
because it's a
please.
mischievous question.
Yes.
Yeah. So, when we decided to have this conversation, Danish sent me a couple of chapters of Ali Jawad Zaidi's book, The History of Urdu. Fantastic book. I suggest many of you interested in languages must read it. And he says very poignantly there.
Just to give you a factoid, Ali Jawad Zaidi, of course, he was a great Urdu literary critic and writer. He's our dear friend Annie Zaidi's
And
grandfather.
yes, yes. There is a tendency to attribute to Urdu an undue dependence on the literary value of Persian and the matter of Islam. He says this could be because of misreading of history or ignorance, to which I will add mischief and politics. How should we really see Urdu, the language and the culture, especially today?
देखिए इसमें दो चीज़ें हैं. पहली चीज़ ये कि ये सोचना कि उर्दू ज़बान जब तुर्क आए, फारस से लोग आए, अरबी से लोग आए, तब उर्दू ज़बान बनी, ऐसा नहीं है. अडीमन, अब्दुल रहमान अडीमन 1000 में किताब लिख रहे हैं जिसको हिंदी या उर्दू की किताब माना जाता है. तो there are already poets, saints who are writing in the 9th century and the 10th century. By that time, the Turks and the Mughals had not come into this country. And what they are writing, that language would be considered as a Hindi language, or what we consider as Urdu language. The other thing is this, that one of the great damage to this language was done by Fort William College. So when John Borthwick Gilchrist, he travels from Gujarat to Bengal in the 18th century. He finds that from Gujarat to Bengal, the language, the lingua franca that's spoken is Urdu, or Rekhta, or Hindi, whatever, because the word Urdu came much later. There's a history to that also. So when Gilchrist is traveling from Gujarat to Bengal in the 18th century, he is basically listening what they at that time call Hindi or Rekhta. So he decides that, or the East India Company decides that if we have to train our officers and we have to make them run the administration in this country, then our officers need to learn the language of this country. So for that, Fort William College comes up in 1800 in Calcutta, and a huge, humongous work of translation begins there, where they are translating literature from Persian, from English, from great European literature, and they are translating this literature in Hindi and Urdu. And Fort William College is the first place where this thing comes up, that Hindi translations are for Hindus and Urdu translations are for Muslims. So this is the first time this distinction is happening, that a language is being tagged with the community, with the religion. Whereas language has got nothing to do with religion. Language has got to do with areas, with geographies. Because ज़बान कैसे बनती है? बातचीत से बनती है ना. 5 आदमी पड़ोसी हैं तो वो जो बात करेंगे उससे ज़बान बनेगी ना. 5 आदमी पड़ोसी कहीं बाहर की ज़बान में क्यों बात करेंगे? अब एक मैं नेटफ्लिक्स की सीरीज़ कर रहा था, तो उसके अंदर मुझे एक पश्तो बोलते हुए अफ़गानी का रोल करना था. अब मैं पश्तो बना हुआ अफ़गानी हूँ, बाकी अफ़गानी लोगों के साथ मैं उर्दू में बात कर रहा हूँ. तो मैंने डायरेक्टर को बुलाया, मेरा डायरेक्टर बंगाली था. मैंने कहा भाई एक बात बताओ, तुम बाकी बंगालियों से क्या हिंदी में बात करते हो? नहीं सर, मैं बंगला में बात करता हूँ. तो मैंने कहा मैं क्यों हिंदी में बात करूँगा, मैं पश्तो से पश्तो में बात करूँगा ना. तो खैर साहब फिर वो समझ गए, मेरे सारे डायलॉग्स पश्तो में किए गए. तो मैं तो अपना काम निकाल ले गया, बाकी एक्टरों ने मुझे बहुत गाली दी क्योंकि उनको पश्तो में याद करना पड़ता था. तो ज़बान इलाकाई होती है. ज़बान जो जहाँ लोग रहते हैं वहाँ उनके आपस के कम्युनिकेशन का एक ज़रिया है. ख़ासकर उस ज़माने में जब मीडिया वो नहीं था, इंटरनेट नहीं था, टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं थी, तो इसको मज़हब से जोड़ना ये एक शरारत हुई फोर्ट विलियम कॉलेज में. और इसने इन दोनों ज़बानों को और आगे चल के तहरीक को, हिंदुस्तान की आज़ादी की, बहुत नुकसान पहुँचाया. पर क्योंकि इब्तदाई दौर, the originators of Hindi and Urdu are the same, both these languages have a lot of similarities. No two languages in the world have this amount of similarity as Hindi and Urdu has. Now, there are 20 alphabets between Hindi and Urdu, which are same, and they are unique to these two languages only. A language is basically formed by 3 things: noun, adjective, and verb. Without verb, you cannot conceive a sentence. So verb is a spine of a language. And the verb treasure of verb that Urdu has is exactly what the Hindi verb treasure is. Maslan, uthna, baithna, khana, peena, आना, जाना, गाना, रोना, धोना, ये क्या है? ये हिंदी भी है, उर्दू भी है. Similarly, wherever Urdu has taken words from other languages, let's say Persian or Arabic or Sanskrit, there also they have turned them into a very Urdu Hindivi thing. जैसे आजमाना, सताना, दफनाना, मनाना, by adding that suffix na, they've turned it into a Hindivi word. They use the same technique for compound words. So like compound verbs, गिर जाना, आ जाना, चले जाना, खा लेना, है ना, मुंह बनाना, these are all compound verbs. Again, Urdu does the same thing. It turns it into Hindi. Similarly, the muhavras, मुंह फुलाना, मुंह ताकना, आंख लड़ाना, है ना, आंख दिखाना, these are same in both the languages. Similarly, ये जो आप, in your innocence, all these cuss words that you give, the galis, they are same in both the languages. So if the Hindi walas and the Urdu walas come here and start fighting and gali galonch pe utar aaye, they'll be speaking the same language to each other. So all these things, they actually make both these languages the same language.
Yeah. Okay, so we will take a couple of questions now. Yeah. Make them short, please, and direct. Yeah. No. Okay. So.
ये यहाँ पे कह रही हैं कि राय देने का हक सिर्फ मेरा है,
Yeah.
आपका नहीं है. आप सवाल पूछिए, राय मत
1
दीजिएगा.
and 2. Yeah. You, ma'am. You. Yeah. Just.
I'm guessing. How do you see translations? Because I always have this question in my mind when I'm reading Rumi in English. I'm not sure of myself. I'm reading what he wanted me to read or wanted to say probably.
देखिए, नहीं, आपका अच्छा सवाल है. Translation is virtually impossible from two languages, from one language to the other. And in poetry, it's even more difficult. Because again, there are a lot of unset cultural norms, values, understanding, which only comes from a context. Now that context may not necessarily have a reference or a parallel in the other language. So how do you translate it? Either you do a literal translation, which will be lost on people, or you find a reference which is parallel to this in your language. Then it is not an exact translation, but it becomes closer in understanding and comprehension for those people. अब जैसे हमारे यहाँ हिंदी में, उर्दू में एक मुहावरा है, वो चल बसे. समझ गए ना आप लोग? मैंने अगर आपसे बोला वो चल बसे, इसका क्या मतलब हुआ? हाँ? He's dead. अब आप वो चल बसे का लिटरल ट्रांसलेशन करिए. यहाँ डेथ आ ही नहीं रही है इसके अंदर. आप कहेंगे वो चल बसे, he got up and left. But he got up and left is not the translation. It's a cultural thing. So when we understand it, when we say wo chal base, everybody understood in this room that it means that somebody has died. But how do you explain this to the other person? अब जैसे एक उर्दू में मुहावरा है, खाक उड़ाना, सर पे खाक उड़ाना. Now that basically means great lamentation. कि इतना आप दुख में, दर्द में मातम कर रहे हैं कि आप खाक जो है, मिट्टी जो है अपने सर पे उड़ा रहे हैं. अब उसका आप लिटरल इंग्लिश ट्रांसलेशन करें, he was blowing sand in his hair. क्या मतलब होगा इसका? मतलब वो अंग्रेज क्या समझेगा? पागल नहीं है लोग क्या? मिट्टी उठा उठा के सर पे डालते हैं. So it is virtually impossible to translate from one language to the other. At best, the great translators, they do transcreation. And उसमें मैं आपको जल्दी से एक किस्सा सुना देता हूँ कि एक, मैं नाम नहीं लूँगा, एक बहुत बड़े इकोनॉमिस्ट थे पाकिस्तान में. उन्होंने मोहब्बत में आके फैज साहब की पोइट्री अंग्रेजी में ट्रांसलेट कर दी. अब वो भी बड़े आदमी थे जिन्होंने ट्रांसलेट किया. So what he did, he sent his translation, English translation to Faiz Ahmed Faiz, and he said, I had the great honor of translating your poetry into English, and can you have a look at it? So Faiz Sahab, whenever he would not like anything, he would pass it on to his wife, Alice. कि तुम देख लो, तुम इसका जवाब दे दो. अब 3, 4, 5 महीने हो गए. So one day Alice said to Faiz Ahmed Faiz कि it looks impolite that he has translated your poetry and you're not even reverting, you're not even acknowledging that. At least send him a letter, something. Just say thank you if you don't like the translation. तो फैज साहब ने उनको एक लेटर लिख दिया कि भाई थैंक यू सो मच फॉर ट्रांसलेटिंग माय पोएट्री. उन्होंने वो लेटर उठा के किताब में डाला और किताब छाप दी. On 24 it working? Yes. Oh, thank you. Promotion ke time chal gaya. So the surprise is that on 24th and on 25th of January 2026, we are bringing two of our plays at Rang Shankara. One is, of course, my play on Sahil Ludhianvi, which is called Main Pal Do Pal Ka Shayar Hoon. Thank you. And the other is the art form of storytelling, Dastan Goi, which is Qissebazi. So please come in great numbers, make it houseful, and make sure that at least we are able to get our money out for coming from Bombay to this place. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank
you so
you.
much.